Moloch is one of the most misunderstood deities of the ancient Near East, a figure whose name echoes through time surrounded by layers of mistranslation, religious polemics, and cultural mythmaking. When we speak his name today, most people imagine the monstrous image stamped onto him by later commentators, a deity supposedly demanding fire and sacrifice, a creature built from the fears of civilizations competing for dominance. But when we peel back the centuries of distortion, what emerges is not a god of cruelty, but a figure of immense spiritual gravity, a divine king enthroned in gold, associated with wisdom, wealth, initiation, and the power of transformation. The ancient world understood that gods were symbols of cosmic forces, not caricatures, and Moloch's true essence lies in the radiant authority he held over spiritual prosperity. Much of the confusion surrounding Moloch comes from the interpretations of later religious texts, particularly the Book of Leviticus. The famous line, Leviticus 18:21, is often translated as a prohibition against passing children through fire to Moloch, and generations took this as proof of literal child sacrifice. Yet there is no archaeological evidence, no contemporary inscription, and no primary source from the cultures that revered him confirming such a practice. Instead, many scholars of Semitic linguistics argue that the phrase was metaphorical, referring to dedication, initiation, or the symbolic passing of a child into a priestly lineage. In ancient societies, passing through fire was a known idiom for purification, initiation, or consecration, not destruction. In this interpretive view, Moloch's priests did not destroy their children. They raised them from a young age in the temple's discipline, training them to honor the god, study the sacred wisdom traditions, and maintain the prestigious priestly roles that governed ritual calendars, astronomy, and the governance of sacred wealth. What Leviticus condemns, therefore, is not a literal burning of children, but the idea of handing one's child over to another religious lineage. It is a warning against allowing foreign spiritual traditions to guide one's children, shaped in the rhetorical style that biblical writers often used. The later transformation of this metaphor into the myth of sacrifice says more about interreligious conflict than about Moloch himself. But outside these polemics, Moloch's true mythic identity emerges in radiant clarity. He was the embodiment of kingly authority, wealth not in the crude sense of gold and possessions, but in the deeper sense of spiritual abundance, the richness of knowledge, and the prosperity that arises from harmony with cosmic order. In this esoteric reading, Moloch sits upon a throne of gold not as a tyrant, but as a symbol of supreme illumination. Gold is the metal of the sun, the symbol of perfected spirit, and the throne of Moloch represents the seat of divine understanding and the stability of cosmic law. Ancient depictions of enthroned deities show them not as beings demanding harm, but as guardians of civilization's highest values, arbiters of justice, and protectors of divine wisdom. In these symbolic systems, he is not a god of cruelty, but a god of order, discipline, sovereignty, and the mastery of material and spiritual wealth. Some mystical interpretations place Moloch upon a throne of radiant gold, not as an idol of greed, but as a symbol of perfected structure, the culmination of internal refinement, and the ability to bring one's potential into stable form. In this vision, he embodies the idea that true wealth is not found in possessions, but in clarity, responsibility, and aligned purpose. He becomes an archetype of spiritual authority, a guardian of boundaries, and a figure who teaches that power must be cultivated through discipline rather than chaos. In certain modern esoteric systems, particularly in the Culophotic interpretations of the Sitra Ara, Moloch takes on an even grander metaphysical form. In this view, he resides in Thaumiel, the highest of the Culophotic spheres, the mirrored counterpart to the divine crown. Here he stands not alone, but alongside his twin, Satanes, forming a pair of polar forces. Together they represent the dual crowns, the twofold expression of divine power, one of severity, one of brilliance, both coexisting at the apex of the shadow tree. In such systems, Moloch is not a figure of terror but of transcendence, a being who represents the ultimate confrontation with the limits of the self, the tearing away of illusions, and the emergence of true spiritual sovereignty. The gold throne is not a symbol of material greed, but of enlightenment achieved through discipline, courage, and the acceptance of responsibility for one's own becoming. This portrayal of Moloch as a supreme god of wisdom and spiritual wealth is a reminder that ancient names often carry multiple layers of meaning. For initiates, Moloch represents the force that teaches the value of duty, structure, and mastery. Just as a throne symbolizes rulership, Moloch symbolizes the internal throne, the seat within the human soul where purpose, reason, and wisdom meet. For some esotericists, Moloch is the essence of the disciplined mind, the architect of spiritual order, the guardian of knowledge that must be earned rather than inherited. He is the flame that illuminates, not the fire that destroys. As one gazes deeper into the mythic image of Moloch, the golden throne becomes a symbol of the stable center, the anchored point in the soul where clarity reigns. The ancient world often depicted divine kings with lions, bulls, or radiant crowns. Moloch's throne shares this symbolism: the crown of sovereignty, the bull's strength, the sun's radiance, all of which represent the power to command one's inner world. In this sense, Moloch is less a deity of external dominion and more a teacher of internal mastery. He reminds the seeker that true wealth is spiritual, true authority is earned, and true wisdom is forged in the fire of transformation. But not literal fire, not the fire of destruction, but the fire of refinement. Through this lens, the ancient accusations collapse, not through denial but through deeper understanding. The absence of historical evidence for sacrifice is not a footnote, it is the truth behind the myth. What remains is the profound image of a god of structure, sovereignty, and luminous wisdom, a deity whose misunderstood past has overshadowed his deeper significance. Moloch becomes a symbol of reclaiming wisdom from distortion, of seeing beyond literalism into the spiritual core of ancient imagery. Thus, as the script draws toward its close, we return to the vision of Moloch seated upon his golden throne, not as a devourer, but as a guardian of hidden knowledge. In the esoteric imagination, he remains a figure of immense power, radiating authority from the highest point of the shadow tree, teaching that true wealth is the wealth of spirit, and that true understanding requires the courage to question inherited assumptions. His presence calls for discernment, strength, and the willingness to look beyond fear into the brilliance of wisdom. And in that golden radiance, the figure of Moloch emerges not as a monster, but as a misunderstood titan of spiritual insight, one whose light, once uncovered, shines with a depth older than the myths that sought to obscure it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications button